Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there. It is Friday, so we're happy and excited about that. And I certainly hope you guys have a great day and a great start to your weekend. And speaking on today, we do have another chance of strong to severe storms. Some areas could see some significant severe weather, that larger hail and higher wind gust. And we'll talk about who could see that. There's some pretty active weather ongoing out there right now across areas like Oklahoma, even further north, a couple states further north like Kansas and Nebraska. And we'll talk about how those storms this morning could affect what could happen later this afternoon into this evening, into even the overnight hours. There is a little bit of a tornado risk again in Colorado. Thankfully, the tornado risk dropped throughout the day yesterday, and that ended up actually verifying where we didn't have any kind of significant tornadoes or anything. There was a very weak tornado just east of Denver. It looked like a little string bean tornado out there. I don't think it really did anything, but it was pretty wild to see. Pretty early in the afternoon yesterday. Outside of that, I'm not hearing a whole lot, but of course, let me know if you're in a small town and community in Colorado, Kansas, or Oklahoma. Let me know what you guys are seeing out there. There is a risk of severe weather in the Northeast today. We'll talk about that. And then I really think across the deep south, Georgia, the Carolinas, I think we're going to have numerous showers and storms today. My wife's heading to, and her sister and her sisters and her mom are actually heading to a little weekend vacation, little weekend getaway. Have the girls by myself this weekend, which little daddy-daughter weekend is certainly going to be exciting. And we're going to figure out what we're going to do this weekend. But they're heading to the beach, and it's looking like it's going to be a stormy Friday for them, heading to Folly Beach here locally here in South Carolina. But we're going to talk about who could see what. In general, a pretty active day today. It's just I don't think we're going to have a high-end severe weather threat or anything like that. But we'll talk about some flooding, and let's break it all down for you folks. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. You guys got anything that I can pray about? I'll pray over. As always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. Let's check out the water vapor loop. You can actually see on water vapor loop the two clusters of storms I just mentioned. One right here and then one right here where it's more whiter in color. That is higher water content in the atmosphere as we are looking at the water vapor loop. And then you can see it's more grayed out, even some white colors showing up here. Very moist atmosphere across the deep south, the Gulf Coast, Florida. Obviously, it always is very moist this time of the year. The Carolinas, up across the I-95 corridor all the way into the Northeast. This is nothing unusual. This is very seasonal for this time of the year. The humidity is really entrenched into the region. I had a couple people ask me yesterday, Mitch, when is it going to cool back down? And I kind of chuckled to myself because it's like, man, we're right in the middle of summer. We are not cooling down anytime soon here in the Southeast. But we start looking for those late summer cold fronts, I would say mid to late August into early September. Sometimes we'll get lucky and we'll get one around Labor Day. And then other times it takes clear till late September to get one. I remember one year we did not get below 60 degrees here in Columbia, South Carolina until October 11th. That was 2018. That was a brutally long summer. Man, it was. But let's get rolling here. Let's take a look at what's falling. And as you can tell, two clusters of storms. The one to the south is severe warned. This is packing a punch. Heads up, Oklahoma City, any kind of town or community in southwest Oklahoma. Oklahoma City, this might move to your south. We'll go on and zoom into this really quick. It's going to probably go mute on your screen here for a second, but then it'll come back up. Give it 1 second, and here it goes. Oklahoma City right into here. This is likely going to potentially surge south of you, but there's a little spin in this. So this is likely producing some damaging winds. Be careful if you're in these areas of western Oklahoma this morning. And then we got a cluster of storms blasting through areas of Nebraska this morning. This is going to deliver some more rain for areas of eastern Nebraska into Omaha over the next several hours. And then just some showers lingering around from late overnight, late evening, overnight convection, making its way through areas of Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. And then we look down here, there's that upper level piece of energy into the western Gulf of Mexico and delivering a lot of rain along the southern coastline of Texas this morning. So we look at Storm Prediction Center. We don't have an enhanced risk today. That might could change, but as of now, you just got the slight risk. This extends from just south of Cheyenne, Wyoming, It does include Denver. I do think there's going to be another tornado risk here in eastern and southeastern Colorado today. You got the slight risk all the way down to, kind of the same areas as yesterday. But this extends a little bit further eastward, and I think that'll be the general theme throughout the weekend. The severe weather threat will shift further east. By the time we're in Sunday, I think everybody in the southeast could be under the gun for some nasty weather. In fact, at day 3, which is for Sunday here in a couple of days, you already have a slight risk. That's a little bit more uncommon for this time of the year in the south. It's not rare by any means, but it's a little bit more uncommon, I would say. But active weather this morning, more expected later this afternoon to the evening, even to the overnight hours into this region. Marginal risk extends all the way up to Canada. And then we're watching this little area right here in the interior northeast. I think if you're in some of these interior northeast towns, like northern sections of New York State, Vermont, and New Hampshire, even northern Maine, you could have some big storms today. So if you're a fan of some summer storms, and you don't get them much in this area of the country, I think today might be your chance. But even in this general risk of storms, guys, I think we'll have a lot of storm activity. And even in the general risk, where there isn't a technical level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather, I do think we will have a risk. 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location. We'll see if this gets bumped up to a 5% risk, but there is a tornado risk basically in this entire slight risk, just that 2% risk. Winds, there's a 15% risk of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher. That's that 50 to 60 miles per hour in the slight risk. But right here in the hatched area, the black outline region, that is that 10% risk of significant winds, which is winds exceeding that 65 knots or higher, which is that 70, excuse me, guys, that 70 to 75 miles per hour. Hurricane force winds are possible in this region of Amarillo up to Woodward, almost all the way up to Dodge City, Kansas. Hail threat, there is not only a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger, there's also that 10% risk on its own, not included, not added to that 15, but it's on its own. You got that 10% risk of significant hail, which is 2 inch in diameter or larger. So Amarillo, especially points north, you guys could really be under the gun again this afternoon, this evening. I would say later this evening more so than anything. There is a risk for flash flooding. There's a slight risk of flash flood guidance being met here in this region right here in the southern plains. And then there is a pretty large slight risk of flash flood guidance being met in areas of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. That's at least a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being met, and really goes off really what, your terrain. It goes off how much rain you've seen lately, things like that. So definitely be aware of this. Watches, warnings, things like that. There is a severe thunderstorm watch out right now. Some heat advisories in and around the Jacksonville to St. Augustine area, and then areas of northern Florida. So be aware of this. It's going to get quite hot, but it's going to be pretty hot all the way into the Carolinas and southern Virginia today, where air temperatures will surge quickly into the low to mid 90s ahead of a lot of storm development later on today. Some flood watches up for southwestern Kansas, things like that. So let's talk about the southeast first, and we'll kind of zoom through this, but we will get pretty detailed for you guys. A more broad look at what's going on. There is some showers and storms along the western coast of Florida this morning. I think as we work our way into the morning hours, I think areas of Tampa Bay points north, I think you're going to be dealing with some showers and storms. And then, as it always does in the afternoon, evenings, basically right after lunchtime to around the early evening time frame in Florida, pretty much everybody in the state of Florida, especially the peninsula of Florida, has an equal chance to see those showers and storms. Whether you have flow aloft or not, pretty much it happens every single day. But you stop it here. This is around 3, 4, 5 p.m. in the afternoon this afternoon. There you go. You got a ton of shower and storm activity stretching from, Little Rock, Memphis, all the way to Atlanta. You got these popcorn kind of showers and storms ongoing. And I think they become more widespread as we get later into the afternoon, this evening, in areas like maybe Georgia, especially South Carolina, eastern North Carolina. I think it can get quite active later on today, and then this lasts throughout the overnight hours and dwindles away. A closer look at the Deep South. What could happen today? We take it to about lunchtime. There's some storms developing in northern Mississippi, areas of eastern Arkansas. Some showers and storms around the Atlanta area around 3 to 5 p.m. could get going, could affect that rush hour on the way home on a Friday evening. I mean, you got these pop-up downpours along the Gulf coastline. Northern Mississippi looks quite active, according to the HRRR model. And, I mean, it looks like you got a lot in shower and storm activity in and around the Atlanta area for a several-hour period. We'll see if this confirms. Typically, these storms kind of explode, kind of blow themselves out, and then dissipate and then kind of pop off outflow boundaries and develop other storms in other locations. It's kind of like these storms develop, right? You got a lot of convective fuel that builds in the atmosphere, this CAPE. They builds up to like 2, 3, even 4,000 joules per kilogram. It's like rocket fuel. A storm explodes, eats up all that energy in the atmosphere and stabilizes that geographical location. Pops off an outflow, which is a rain-cooled boundary. This rain-cooled boundary hits all this warm air around it. Cool air hitting the warm air causes lift, and it causes more thunderstorm development. Hope that makes sense, but that's basically the general flow in the deep south, the southeast, every single summer in the middle of summer. It's typically how you get storm development. That's why you'll be chilling outside, and then all of a sudden you hear a crack of thunder, and then all of a sudden you got a storm on top of you within 10 minutes. That's how it forms. You get these outflow boundaries that fly through and explode storms right on top of you. They're very hard to predict. But in general, every state you see on this map has a pretty good chance to see some storms. I think Tennessee takes a break today. I think Memphis, Tennessee could see some storms later this afternoon, this evening. I think for the most part, Tennessee up to Kentucky stays pretty quiet. Arkansas, you could get multiple rounds of storms this afternoon, later overnight tonight. We take our way to Florida. Like I said, you'll be dealing with these showers and storms, downpours all throughout the morning, kind of on the southern Big Bend coastline of Florida, and then they become more widespread. You could have some storms from Jacksonville all the way to Miami, all along the East Coast, all the way on the West Coast. Everybody pretty much has a solid equal chance to see some downpours by the afternoon and evening. So if you're vacationing down here, this is nothing unusual. Happens every single day. You start the day off beautiful, hot, humid. By the time you get to 2 to 4 p.m., storms start exploding everywhere. And then by the time you get into the evening hours, 8, 9, 10, 11 p.m., you're left with just high humidity and not a whole lot going on. But definitely some storms could become more widespread in South Georgia, maybe more so later tonight. We'll see what happens. Make our way up to the us folks here in the Carolinas, Virginia, Eastern Tennessee, etc. Georgia, we take it all the way to, about early to mid-afternoon. I would say 2 to 4 p.m. You start to get these pop-up downpours, and they could be anywhere. I could sit here and spit out names of towns and cities until the cows come home, but it could just as easily be another town and city. But these become more widespread, I think, as we work our way to around dinner time. So if you're out and about in Charlotte, Raleigh, Columbia, Augusta, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, all the way up to Charlottesville, Richmond, Roanoke. You guys anybody has a chance to see a shower or storm, and they could be strong. They could pop up out of nowhere. I would notice one trend with the models is as you get into around the 7 to 9 p.m. time frame in South Carolina, it really wants us to have a pretty stormy Friday night here in South Carolina, maybe even Eastern North Carolina. It shows a lot more widespread activity based off the HRRR model. And so we'll have to watch for this because this could produce flooding. And, if you look at the FV3 model, it kind of shows the same scenario. This is around 4 p.m. Shows some big storms firing off the eastern slopes of the southern apps of North Carolina. These fly through Charlotte. This model has it pretty active around 6 p.m. in Charlotte. And then look how active it kind of gets down here in the eastern South Carolina, even down here in South Georgia, eastern North Carolina. It gets pretty active around that 9 to 11 p.m. time frame. So, be aware of that. I don't think this is just going to be an afternoon threat for areas out there, especially the Carolinas. But you see the general theme, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, most of West Virginia, not going to see much rain today. This is more so the deep south and the Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, up to Virginia. And we'll talk about the Northeast here in a second. This is where the higher chances of measurable rainfall is going to happen. Of course, pretty much when you get rained on in the summer, it's measurable rainfall. It's not a light rain, but Let's go up to the northeast. You have that marginal risk of severe weather. I typically don't talk in depth on a marginal risk, but this is not unusual, but a little bit more uncommon for you folks in the interior northeast. And I think from Watertown, Syracuse, Binghamton, maybe Albany, all the way up to Burlington, all the way up to maybe even Caribou, Maine. I think you guys have a risk of some strong to severe storms today for sure. These could pack more of a punch up here than they do in the southeast, and a little bit more zoomed in, kind of widespread look. By the time we get to about 1 to 2 p.m., you got storms developing in central to eastern PA, some storms developing potentially in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia, storm really close to Scranton right here. Harrisburg? Some big storms are possible. Binghamton, the Finger Lakes region, the southern tier of New York State. And when you stop it here, it's around 3 p.m. Kind of isolated, scattered about storms, and any of these could be severe. Could produce some hail, some gusty winds. I know I got some loyal viewers up here in the northeast. Certainly be aware of these storms. I know there's some higher terrain up here, some hills, there's some valleys, some flat out some mountains. This is an area of the country I would love to live one day. But I think regardless, I'm definitely going to visit up here one day. But you're going to have some big time storms, even up into Canada. Canada could get some big storms today, but you bring it to right here. Watch out, Burlington. Some big storms. Any kind of small town and community up here in the northern sections of New York State, western and northwest and northern Maine. Some big storms are possible, and these sweep through, become widespread. This is around 5 p.m., and I think it's going to be quite active. Now, along the I-95 corridor, New York City, the Boston, I don't think it's going to be as active, but you could get some storms in the Delmarva region. And I think eastern PA could certainly be quite active. Some storms are possible in northern New Jersey. And even down in the southern valley regions of New York State, some storms could become a lot more active. By the time you get to 6, 7, 8 p.m., you're still dealing with these storms in Vermont, New Hampshire, especially northern New Hampshire. And then by the time you get to around 10, 11 p.m., I think these begin to diminish. So a quick blast through of all these storms. They develop, move in general northeast, and then they diminish by the time we get to around the midnight time frame. So, if you're basically, let's see if this is going to work, and it is. If you're basically in this whole entire region, I would say right into here, you're going to get a chance of, and I'm just really speaking on the U.S., you're going to get a chance of storms today. But I would say if you're more so, in this region right into here, I think these storms have a chance to bring severe limits. Okay, hope that drawing helps somewhat. But let's keep moving forward. But rainfall with this today, certain areas, especially if you get multiple rounds of storms, could see over an inch of rain. And I'm talking about you in the far northeast corner of New York State, northern Vermont, New Hampshire. Half inch to an inch of rain is possible. Areas of western and southwestern Maine also. And then, you get down to the mid-Atlantic, you guys could see 1/10 of an inch to a 1/4 inch of rain, depending on if you get under a storm. Some areas in central and eastern PA could certainly see some rain. You get into western PA, western areas of West Virginia and Ohio, I don't think you're going to get much storm action today. So let's speak of the south central U.S. Denver to Tulsa to Oklahoma City, everybody in between, Amarillo, Dodge City, Woodward, Pueblo, you guys are under that slight risk of severe storms today. We just talked about that. And really, the big story as far as talking about ingredients is these storms are out there right now. They're eating up all this CAPE and fuel left in the atmosphere, which, you do have CAPE values, 1,500 to over 2,000 joules per kilogram in this region. This will get ate up today, later this morning, throughout the morning hours, okay? How much does the atmosphere recover all the way up into Colorado, southwest Kansas, the panhandle of Oklahoma, the panhandle of Texas? Well, the HRRR model says it definitely is. By the time you get to 3, 4 p.m., you got CAPE values in the mixed layer spiking to over 3,000 joules per kilogram again. Some areas may be pushing 4,000 joules per kilogram. So a lot of energy rebuilds back into this region very quickly. The atmosphere recovers from the morning showers and convection. So this is basically rocket fuel waiting for another round of storms to fly over this ridging, very light, weak ridging over the southwest. And it will, and as it does, it eats up all that fuel, as you can tell. It's like the Cookie Monster eating up all the cookies, and it eats up all this fuel. and then you rinse and repeat again for tomorrow where you have another slight risk. So you talk about what that could look like. Well, here's this cluster of storms. The HRRR model doing its best to pick up on it, but it does show both clusters, so it's not whiffing on these lines of storms. And we'll really just speak on this and this, and we'll speak on this here in a second. This area of storms will continue to trail off into Oklahoma. What does it do downstream as it gets into eastern Oklahoma? Maybe extreme northeast Texas. I would watch if you're in eastern Oklahoma, even western Arkansas, northeast Texas. This line of storms will continue to, and the line of storms I'm talking about, if you didn't watch this part of the video, is this right here. What does this do as it continues to march into Arkansas? Does it hold on? Does it make it all the way to the Dallas-Fort Worth area? You know, it's a big question. So, you know, we'll go back to this. So we'll continue to watch this. You could have additional convection that gets going in southern Arkansas, eastern Arkansas. But it's really, and I do want to mention, I think that these showers and storms could become widespread again just north and east of Houston. Watch out for some bigger storms in this region. But I think most of what's going to happen along the coastline of Texas maybe happens this morning. But as you can tell, big line of storms develops maybe as far west as northeast, New Mexico. This blasts through the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. But look at these little cells developing. This is 6, 7 p.m. Look at these little cells developing around Pueblo, just south of Denver. Watch out if you're in any town or community in southeast Colorado. There could be a tornado or two. It did not materialize yesterday, thank goodness. But you kind of have two areas to watch around 8 to 9 p.m. One is these little clusters of storms in Colorado. You got some storms here in southern areas of Kansas, and then you got a main cluster of storms here. These could be producing winds exceeding hurricane force winds, those 75 mile per hour winds, large hail, and then this once again blast through Woodward, southwest Oklahoma, and then this starts to knock on the door of Oklahoma City, Tulsa, as you make your way around the midnight time frame. But you're going to have some big storms even ongoing here in southeast Colorado, and then areas of Kansas and the panhandle of Oklahoma. So really just multiple clusters. And I think one big line of storms will get going as early as 4 or 5 p.m. this afternoon, this evening, in areas of maybe extreme northeast New Mexico into the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. And then it'll work its way throughout the evening and overnight hours throughout the rest of the panhandle of Texas, through areas of maybe southern Kansas and Oklahoma. And then you watch out for these supercells. Speaking of those supercells, if we look at them, we look at the updraft velocity swath over the next 24 hours. It really does like this area. Colorado Springs, Pueblo, points east and southeast. This entire corner right here, Colorado, watch out for some supercells later this evening that do have the chance to produce a tornado. That's why you got the 2% risk. So please take this serious. And speaking of the winds, I'm going to look at this a little bit different. This is potential HRRR wind gust swaths. So it's going to show it hour by hour by keeping on the screen. This is the morning storms. I can already tell you this is a little bit more south. This is showing a little bit more north than guidance. These storms are actually a little bit further south. But you keep this going here and watch what comes up on your screen right here. Amarillo, look at this line of storms, okay? Now, I know you see these little weird gaps. Those are not literal gaps. It's not like these storms are going to skip these areas and move to here, then here, then here, then here. It's just picking up in 1 hour intervals. But as you can tell, you look in these whitish pinkish colors, that's winds exceeding 80 miles per hour. So Amarillo, Woodward, Oklahoma, any community in the panhandle of Oklahoma, okay? Guyman, you guys, Perryton again. I know you guys got hit a month or so ago really hard. Weatherford, Oklahoma, Elk City, Mangum. You guys could get definitely some damaging winds later this evening as a line of storms works its way through this entire region. So please be aware of that. Rainfall, some of this is falling right now, but additional rainfall is possible from this other line of storms. I would actually move this a little bit further south. I don't know why this is so far north. But anyways, this entire region, watch out for another 1 to 2 inches of rain. You guys continue to get rounds of rain while areas to your south is starting to dry back out again. The north central U.S., You could get some severe weather in Minnesota, the Dakotas today. You're making your way into early afternoon. We'll watch the lingering convection moving out of Nebraska as it tries to move into Iowa. I think as we get into early afternoon, throughout the afternoon, evening, it could be quite a rainy day across the entire state of Iowa. As this makes its way across Iowa, some rain showers are possible in southern Minnesota. And then you could get some severe storms here in areas of extreme southeastern North Dakota, northeastern South Dakota, even some storms in southeast South Dakota around this afternoon, this evening, and then some severe storms are possible in northern Minnesota today. Some more storms could redevelop here in southeast Nebraska later this afternoon, and this continues to make its way here, and then maybe some more storms develop north of Minneapolis. And we'll see what happens with that. But a little bit closer look at my folks here in areas of the Midwest and the Mississippi Valley. You guys, if you're northern, obviously in Iowa, I just mentioned, but also northern areas of Missouri, you guys could see some more storms. And we'll watch to see as some thermodynamics build into this region, some ingredients build into this region that could support the refiring of this energy. So, if you're in basically the entire, I would say, eastern half of Missouri, some storms could fire up, around 5 to 7 p.m. this afternoon, this evening. You could get around the storms that moves through the St. Louis area later this evening. And then some storms begin to move into western areas of Illinois. Watch out, Peoria, maybe a little bit later this evening. And then some showers can make their way all the way to Chicago into the late overnight hours tonight into this region. But you could get a strong to severe storm or two in southern sections of Missouri into the overnight hours, as we'll watch some convection that flies through this region. So don't be surprised if you're around the Springfield area, all the way to the Boot Heel, Missouri region, the Ozarks of Arkansas. If you hear some rumbles of thunder overnight while you're sleeping, don't be surprised one bit. But looking at the western U.S., not a whole lot's going on, but, as we get into around the 3 to 4 p.m. range, some showers are possible in northern Washington State, some isolated showers, downpours are possible in eastern Oregon and northern areas of Nevada. Very scattered about areas in the southern half of Idaho, the western half of Montana, the western half of Wyoming. Some downpours are possible, and they will develop, and with a light flow aloft, will work their way from west to east. But not expecting any severe weather and anything bad. Just watch out. I've already mentioned this, but watch out for these supercells in areas of eastern Colorado along that southern front range here in Colorado later today. These could be quite intense. But everybody else, pretty chill out west. You still are enjoying below average temperatures across the northern plains. And you can see it here. In fact, this rain-cooled air in areas of the Midwest and the plains will keep temperatures only in the 60s. Some areas might not get out the 50s, potentially. Kind of right where Minnesota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa almost connect in this region. Could be quite cool. I think Georgia, the Carolinas, out to Virginia will get very hot very quick today, well into the 90s. It'll be very warm before you get some big-time storm development later on today. Very warm up into the northeast. Even in some of these higher elevations could try to nip the low 80s in some of these valley towns and communities. Warm all the way up into Canada. The deep south, just seasonal warm air. In fact, I would argue maybe a little bit below average. And then south of this boundary, Texas pretty warm, but, it's nothing compared to what you guys have seen. You guys can certainly handle these temperatures below average in the northern part of the country with this you're still being influenced by this troughing and cooler than average temperatures running out of steam here. The desert southwest, well over 100 degrees, but nothing too bad. Below average in California and the valleys, you're much cooler compared to several days ago where you were well into the 100s, but still above average temperatures. It's always a hot spot in the Pacific Northwest, these lower elevations in Washington State and also Idaho, where temperatures will rise into the 90s today. So moving forward, another day of severe weather, kind of in the same areas, but extended a little bit further east. So all the way to the Mississippi Valley, Memphis, Little Rock, all the way into the Boot Heel, Missouri, southern areas of Illinois, all the way into western areas of Kentucky. You have a severe weather day for tomorrow. So we'll talk about this in the next video. And As we move into Sunday, check this out. This is new. A slight risk for everybody in the deep south, just about the southeast, all the way up to the mid-Atlantic. We need to figure this one out, but there's a 15% risk of severe weather. So these storms will pack a punch Sunday. We'll have to watch. I might be interested in going out and chasing a little bit Sunday afternoon, evening after church. So we'll see what happens with Sunday. We'll talk about all this in great detail in the coming videos. But I do think Sunday is going to be quite an active day in the southeast. We'll see if there's uptrends or downtrends. But you certainly are going to have a risk for severe weather with a flow right in the middle of the country. So that's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Appreciate the support. And I'll talk to you again soon. Have a great Friday.